Today we're going to do part 2 of our notes, and it's going to be pretty short. We just have one example to do, but it is a case 2, which is harder than case 1, so we want to pay attention closely and keep our work nice and neat. Alright, so what we're going to do first is we're going to graph the points that they gave us so we have a visual of what the situation is. I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. Black, okay. So it looks like the midpoint is at 3, 4. I'm just going to put M here for midpoint. And one of the endpoints is at -3, -2. So I have this line segment AB, and all I know is one endpoint's coordinates, and I know where the midpoint is. So there's two ways to look at this. The first way is we can actually count how much it takes to get to the midpoint and just repeat that process to get to the other endpoint. So if we go up and over, it looks like I went up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. And I went over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it looks like we went up 6 and over 6. Just double count that here. Okay. All right. -3, -2, and 3, 4. Just double checking here, make sure my points are right. All right, so if I want to find where the other endpoint is, then I have to continue this pattern and keep going from the midpoint to the mystery endpoint. So we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's where my other endpoint is going to be. So it looks like the coordinates for that are 9 and 10. So this is the graphing method, and we can kind of see what's going on here. We're just repeating the pattern to get to our other endpoint. So graphs are nice, counting's nice, but again, what if I give you decimals? What if you have fractions? What if you have really big numbers? You don't want to count all that. So we're going to do the algebraic method. All right, so this is way 2. We'll call this way 2, and we're just going to write that it sometimes works. It's totally legit, but again, if you have big numbers, it's not always going to be the best method. So what we're going to do is I'm going to label this not x1, y1 because it's a midpoint, not an endpoint. So I'm going to label this mx and my. Might look weird, but that stands for the midpoint of the x's and the midpoint of the y's. But this one we can leave as x1, y1, because that is an actual endpoint. So if we remember our midpoint formula, it is x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to split this into two problems. So we're going to do a couple things here. I'm just going to write x1 plus x2 over 2 equals mx. So whatever this is comes out to be the midpoint of the x's. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. This time it's going to be my. So now is where I'm actually going to do some substituting. x1 we said is -3. I'm not going to write x2. It's just a variable, so I'm just going to leave it as x. And the midpoint of the x's was 3, or mx was 3. So there's one equation. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So y1 is -2, but I don't know what y2 is. and I know that the midpoint of the y's is 4. And then we just have to go through and solve that and see what we get. So what I like to do is multiply by 2. I don't like this fraction for either equation. So we're just going to multiply the tops by positive 2. And what that does, oops, we have to do the other side. Right? What you do to one side, you do to the other. I'm going to do this so I don't get my work mixed up. What happens is these two just divide and make 1, so we don't really need them anymore. And I'm left with negative 3 plus x equals 6. And on the other side, same issue. 2 and 2 make 1, so we're just going to divide those. We get negative 2 plus y equals 8. And if we go through and solve this, we're going to get 9 and 10. So that means my answer is 9, 10. So that's where the other endpoint is, and that does match our graph. So that's how we know that we really did a good job with that. So a lot more work than a case 1, but that's probably the most organized way to do it. And you might get good at it and not have to show as much work, and that's totally fine. But just remember, the more you show, the more you get. So sometimes it's worth taking the extra time to write it out.